Jehovah's Witnesses today believe that Christ's second coming dates from the year 1914, invisibly. The history of this controversial date stretches back to the 1870s.
The Proclaimer's book states that Russell discerned that Christ would return as a glorious spirit person, invisible to human eyes. As early as 1876, he recognized that the year 1914 would mark the end of the Gentile times. They failed to tell their readers that to Russell, the end of the Gentile times was another way of saying the end of the world. In other words, what Russell had really predicted was doomsday for the year 1914.
How interesting to know that he has the world's affairs in his charge, and that the reign of sin and death will soon be overthrown by Messiah's kingdom.
Charles Taze Russell engaged in pyramidology to set his dates. He believed that the Great Pyramid of Giza was God's stone witness, corroborating biblical time periods. When Russell died in 1916, he was buried near a pyramid, which serves as a continuing testimony to his pagan occult teachings. Years later, the organization informed Jehovah's Witnesses that the pyramid was not to be considered as connected to true worship. Thus, we see that the Proclaimer's book admits Jehovah's Witnesses practiced false worship.
The witnesses claim that Jesus Christ is present and ruling invisibly from the heavens since 1914. What is the significance of this date in light of their prophecies for the end of the world?
History has shown the 1914 chronology is false, with clear occultic origins. Therefore, all other dates based on it are likewise false. The Watchtower's founder, Charles Taze Russell, is a false prophet, and therefore, so are his successors, the Watchtower leaders.
These charges of occult beginnings are no doubt shocking to modern Jehovah's Witnesses, as they deny all connections to the occult. Is there further evidence of occult involvement besides the setting of wrong dates due to pyramidology?
After Charles Taze Russell's death, Joseph Rutherford seized control of the society. I'm presently writing a book on Jehovah's Witnesses and the occult. Present-day witnesses may be surprised to learn that their late president, Judge Rutherford, was in contact with spirits. In fact, he claimed to have received instructions from the dead Pastor Russell. He even taught that the organization was not under the direction of the Holy Spirit, but under direction of invisible spirits. None of these facts are brought forth in the Proclaimer's book. Is this candid and honest? Does their organization really have divine guidance as they claim? Or is it based on occultism? The evidence is clear. It is.
The name Jehovah's Witnesses is a distinct one. Previously, they were called Associated Bible Students, or Russellites, as well as a variety of other names. Why the change in 1931?
Basically, the name change came about because of Judge Rutherford's jealousy over the influence of the dead Charles Russell. Russell had been well loved and revered by his followers, who believed him to be the sole channel of truth, the faithful and discreet slave, even in death. The judge would not stand for this for very long. He wanted a new religion with himself firmly in control. Faithful followers took phonographs door to door so that all could hear the judge calling religion a snare and a racket.
It is often said that religion is a snare and a racket. And why? Religion had...
In this way, the Russellites became the witnesses. Really, they were Joseph's witnesses. The judge forced through a change of name. He claimed that angels had revealed the name Jehovah's Witnesses to him. Now he controlled everything. As the dictator over Jehovah's Witnesses, he remained firmly in charge until his death in 1942.
Jehovah's Witnesses have a long history of false dates for the end of the world, stretching back over 100 years. Most all modern-day Jehovah's Witnesses are not aware of the facts.
I was a fourth-generation Jehovah's Witness and met Judge Rutherford personally as a child. From the writings of Charles Russell, my great-grandparents and other early believers learned and believed the end would be here by 1914. We had a large library of Watchtower books in our home. My family believed each world war would end in Armageddon, as they had been taught. This proclaimer's book is just not truthful. The real facts are covered over.
My mother's family were international Bible students, the early version of Jehovah's Witnesses. The date 1925 was taught for the beginning of paradise on earth. The Watchtower said, "Millions now living will never die." Farmers were told they didn't have to plant their crops that year. Because my grandfather planted his crops early in 1925, the family were looked down upon for their unfaithfulness. There were no apologies from the Watchtower Society when the 1925 date failed.
When Paradise didn't arrive, as they always did, the Society had to keep the myth going, so they built this palatial mansion in California called Beth Sarim. It was to house the princes, and they call it the House of Princes. It was for Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and it was supposed to be there for them when they returned from the dead, which the witnesses were expecting to happen at any time. But it was actually deeded to the princes, but it was Judge Rutherford who moved in and enjoyed it.
As a zealous Jehovah's Witness, I was given information about Beth Sarim in the 1960s, including the fact that the Society had taught that the Old Testament prophets would show up and identify themselves to the Watchtower leaders. One unshaven tramp even showed up and tried to claim Beth Sarim, but he was sent on his way by the Society.
My father was a friend of Judge Rutherford, and as a young child I remember people talking about the judge's drinking problem, and it never seemed to bother anybody. And when I got to Bethel, I heard those stories confirmed by older Bethelites who used to talk about how they smuggled whiskey in from the Canadian branch for him.
The Watchtower Society denies teaching the end of the world for the period we call World War II.
I remember the time period of World War II as a Jehovah's Witness. We had been led to expect that there would be no winning side in World War II, but only Armageddon. I served as a full-time pioneer until I was arrested and sent to prison for 5 years. I refused military service in obedience to the Watchtower. My wife and I tried our best to live according to the instructions from the Society. We gave up having children since Armageddon was so close. Now, I have no children to help me in my remaining years. I wish I'd never believed the children's book.